The Unicornis Manuscripts, a live Periscope reading by Fairy Princess Lolly. Chapter 2, from Magnalucius's journal. Monday in March, being the vernal equinox. Planting begun in earnest, but I must record a single event. Shortly after daybreak, as is my habit, I walked in contemplation through the alder groves bordering our river. There I glimpsed a forest creature altogether white in color. A hart, I now believe, but cannot be certain, for it was moving through the thickest brush, all greening with new leaves. Now this was the remarkable thing. I was balanced in a most inward state of devotion, yet this curious creature did not draw my attention outward, as is the irksome habit of intriguing objects. Instead, I stood a while in a most pleasurable stillness of mind and spirit, for the beast seemed as much within me as without, among the alders. But when my curiosity quickened enough to speculate on what species of creature I beheld, it vanished forthwith. May the loving God protect us and our master. No longer do we wonder by what means such pure souls, set quite loose from the world, find their way into our remote society. Those who belong arrive, so be it. Friday of March the 26th. Again I have glimpsed the white beast, and I marvel at God's works, for I strongly suspect it to be the fabled unicorn. Having finished tilling the westernmost field and leaning on my spade, I fell to gazing on the great vine of honeysuckle in new bloom upon the ruined wall. Upon me, unbidden, came a speechless joy at that divine hand that guides to perfection every stem and leaf and petal. And I was lifted up, and I saw the flowery mass as never before, glowing with a celestial and jewel-like light. How long I gazed thus, I do not know. But at length I grew mindful that in the center of this extraordinary sight was the head of an animal, regarding me with great kindly eyes that showed no fear. On his forehead was set a single horn, white as ice. The sight of this singular device sent a thrill at my back. I believe I swooned, for the next I knew I was sitting on the earth, and the creature was no more to be seen. I know it will not be wise to speak of this hastily. The Saturday following. Donkey wagon broken, an iron axle shaft to be obtained. The blessed Eugnatos remains in retreat. Sunday of March 28th. This morning, Sylvanus baked wonderful breads, a triumph since our store flour is so low. All afternoon I vainly searched the fields and woods for any sign of the white beast with the horn. Monday, the next day. In the forenoon broke a tremendous thunderstorm. Fortunately, most of the planting was finished. I found a most curious pebble, possibly of glass, by the waterfall. It appears to be natural. The first Sunday after Easter. About the second hour of the morning, Sylvanus, our excellent cook, was seated at the edge of the forest that overlooks our garden. Not far away, I was gathering herbs and greenery for the cure of fever. Now Sylvanus was deep in contemplation, as is his custom, when there approached him a white creature. There could be no mistake. Its single horn was white and shining. It was a unicorn. It fell in full view. It stood only a few paces from Sylvanus, regarding him as silently as the fall of dew. Whether the cook saw the animal or not, I could not tell, for Sylvanus made no outward sign or motion. For near an hour the two remained thus, man and unicorn, neither moving at all. Nor did I budge from where I watched, awestruck. There was a slight odor of spice, like cinnamon. I do now believe that Sylvanus and the creature were conversing, one with the other, in the brightness of their minds. I do not dare speak to anyone of this mystery. Rather, I shall await the return of our master, who can untangle this for me, for he is a man learned in all knowledge that men possess, and more besides. The Wednesday following. The mystery of this beast has seized my heart. All my wanderings and secret studies have not stirred me so deeply. I feel as if I stood on the deck of a noble ship and gazed upon a foreign land in which are seen strange adventures and wondrous deeds. Yet this is no ordinary obsession, for my thoughts bring me a rare tranquillity, almost a joy. I seem to catch sight of this truth. The unicorn is not the true center of this mystery, for although this creature is most manifestly sensible and corporeal, yet at the same time I know he is a kind of sign, a portent. Such are my thoughts for today. A little after first light, I saw the creature again, and I shall tell how. Wandering farther afoot than usual, I came to the twin hills overlooking the vineyard. In that abundant meadow, I was so taken by the quiet and beauty of the Lord's creation, all in the hush of springtime, that I threw myself down upon the grass and then, lying back like a child, looked up at the sky. Gazing at the clouds that sailed overhead, I fell into a reverie. Some time after, I sensed a fragrance, as of cinnamon, and sitting upright, lo, I saw the favored beast, all shining and not many paces away. And for this first time I had heard his voice, solemn yet musical, like a distant bell echoing in a tall tower. Then turning himself, the unicorn walked into the small grove of trees that crowns the slope, and I could see him no longer. I followed after, for it seemed that I should, but nowhere in the copse did I find him. But neither could the animal have fled unseen, for those trees are everywhere surrounded by an open meadow, nor is there any hiding place among them. Of this matter I am amazed, yet shall I continue my silence. Sunday of April the 11th. As I labored in the fields, this day I heard voices calling that our master had at last finished his long retreat. I ran to greet him, hoping to beg for his private counsel on the matter of this perplexing beast that so dominates my thoughts. Others were already with him, but as I hurried up, he turned to me, saying loudly that all might hear, "And hast thou seen the unicorn?" I had forgotten that from him no secrets are concealed. So great was my consternation that all I could reply was simply, "Yes." "At last," he cried, "and dost thou think that thou alone hast seen the creature?" Then all the others laughed, but not with ill intent, and left me standing in confusion. Wednesday of April the 14th. Our master came upon me by the ruined fountain and bade me speak. "What is this unicorn," I asked, "that he may disappear?" "The beast cannot disappear," Eugnostus replied. "He merely leaves our realm and passes to another." I asked, "What other realm is there?" "Hast thou no knowledge of the 4 ages?" he inquired of me. Which knowledge I did have from the writings of Plato, the first being the fabled Golden Age, then the ages of silver and of bronze, and now, lastly, a final age of iron. And our master asked me, "Are these 4 ages not akin to the great dynasties that chart the failing history of mankind?" "They are," I replied. "And yet they are not," he said, "or rather, more than that." Then he led me into the garden and seated me on the bench of learning, covered my head with his own cloth, and instructed me. I am confounded, for he gave me a great teaching in whose light all things are seen anew. "Attend well," he said. "Each of these previous ages continues still, for they were not measures of the changing years upon this world we know, but rather are other realms where a man has sojourned before arriving here. The first is called the Age of Gold, because it is as radiant with golden light as a thought newborn from the mind of God. Each age that follows is a further elaboration of that theme, there being 3 more steps by which divine thought is finally congealed into our age's dense and inert matter. Together, the realms are as the 4 notes of a powerful chord that spans all that was, or is, or ever shall be. Man has occupied each realm and, each time, failing in his oath and promise, was removed to a lower, coarser one. The others are invisible to us, yet every age endures, intermingling with the rest, the warp of one serving as the other's woof. As Eunostos spoke, a great stillness had come over the garden. Standing quietly by the trees was the unicorn, his eyes wide and bright, his ears attentive as my master continued his account. "Know thou," he said to me, "that the unicorn is a creature of the golden age, which is his proper home. But as the enduring friend of man, often he joins us in our exile, for he can cross the threshold of the ages, and when he departs from us, he does not disappear, but simply passes through a portal. Then I asked, may we pass through these portals also? Indeed, the blessed Eunostos replied. No man can regain the paradise from whence he came, except that he journeyed back across those realms. Yea, many have passed therein. Their gates are never far, though the realms are artfully concealed, and finer within the courser, and each entrance is a riddle difficult to discover without the proper guide. For some, the unicorn serves as a guide, and he has chosen thee. Continued from a previous page, not shown. Different from the several schools and collegia wherein I have studied. Sylvanus goes into retreat at first light tomorrow, and I am selected as tomorrow's cook. Lord have mercy on us all, for my vast and Catholic knowledge, garnered from so many lands and peoples, does not include practical use of the oven. Says Eunostos, all knowledge is vain, except where there be work, and all work is empty, except where there be love. Tuesday of April the 20th. My first day in the kitchen. We are now 21 mouths to feed. To my aid came an angel in the form of Johann's daughter Isabella, and for that I believe the others are thanking God. Again I am humbled. Never had I concerned myself overmuch with Isabella, for she is but 16 years of age. But this day I found her a delightful spirit, of a devotional temperament delightfully suited to our company. I am truly abashed also, for she has remarkable familiarity with the beast she calls our unicorn, and she speaks readily of that strange and venerable creature as if he were a familiar pet, and not the ancient guardian of mystic paths. In fact, she seems acquainted with the creature's very thoughts and feelings. Tomorrow I journey to Firenze with Piero the Elder. To be purchased: sound drawing papers from Rizzoletti, manuscript vellum, second quality inks, glycerin, gum, Arabic, steel pens, ground colors, blue, green, brown, needles, a knife suited to the kitchen use, and peppercorns. Saturday of May the beginning. Last night I returned alone, weary of travel, and under the starlight gave most wholehearted thanks to God for this domain where we find such sweet refuge. My brief sojourn in Firenze left me in bafflement and disarray, but today I clearly see how that city's magnificent intellectual ferment is but the flush of a fever arising from a bottomless emptiness of faith. Those noble men, many of them my friends and fellow students of old, all vied to surpass one another and professed mastery of things which they dwell in utter ignorance. To think that the beauty of their frail works can conquer death, and that the core of their ceaseless activities lies a discontent so profound that it grieves my heart. To none of them did I speak of the precious unicorn, for their proud minds would have considered him either a fanciful myth or a scientific curiosity. Even so, I caused them great amusement, for to their eyes I have become a child again, a superstitious rustic clinging to dim fables in this age of changing ways and bold discovery. If these men are to shape the years to come, then my heart cries out, for those times will prove harsh and inhospitable to our modest, friendly creature and his subtle ways, driving him to retreat still further from the paths of man. But let the others mold the world. Tomorrow, at last, I go into my retreat. Sunday of May the 2nd at dawn. Eunostos had bidden that I take with me neither paper nor pen. I here confess that my past seclusions have been mostly dry and difficult, largely relieved by my books and writings. Yet I must now trust my master. Eunostos says, "Only when thou drinkest from the rivers of silence wilt thou learn to sing." Wednesday of May the 5th. In the twilight hour I took an evening stroll. Light-headed from fasting, I fell into a sort of reverie. Studying the ground before me as I walked, I heard a musical note to one side, and I looked over, thinking it a bird. But instead of whippoorwill, there was a crone perched on a rock, while behind her an odd stone tower that I had never seen before. I marveled, for I was somehow in an unknown place. Her eyes were very bright, and she beckoned me to step closer. "I know not who you are, nor where bound," she said, "but I see the words you write, and will be read in far and distant lands. Therefore, pay heed, for yours is a great burden." "Speak on," said I. "Once, long ago, mankind dwelt in simple contentment. Easily we saw what we now struggle to perceive." So saying, she picked up a twig and pushed its tip into the earth. But in restlessness our attentions wandered ever outward, and we conceived to wish to know every secret of the world. As she said this, she commenced to trace the circles of a spiral in the earth. In time our gaze was fully bent in a new direction, and our minds became cunning. Our knowledge was increased by a multitude, and where before we had partnership, now was bold dominion, and the old way of looking was forgot. Now you are entering another great turn. All your courts vie to discover each next new thing in all of the arts. They do not guess that all this tumult also draws us away from the ways of the soul, which the ancients called the garden, asked I. "Indeed," she said, and a smile crossed her lips. "The garden will do. Far we are now from those happy days, but still farther we go. Each generation must have their own way, and their ways will bring the whole world to the edge of its doom. But the lords of dominion shall see only their wonders, not the ills and sorrows that their will has wrought, and they shall speed on their wheels of bright iron. But all things have their limit, and the hour will come when their wheels will all wobble, and all power and dominion fall to ash and confusion. Then most will despair, and some will finally turn inward in prayer, and from prayer will come grace, and from grace will come turning. For their age will be ending, and those days will be called the last days." And saying this, she changed direction in her scribing, so that her twig began casting the outer circumference of a second spiral, and the line that she drew moved inward towards the center. "And those days," she said, "will be called the last days." Then suddenly a unicorn appeared before me, which so startled me that I fell over backwards. When I righted myself again, I was sitting on familiar ground, not far from my retreat, with neither crone nor hut nor unicorn in sight. Was this a dream? This encounter sorely perplexed my mind. Have I not heard the tale of the man who dug for turnips and found gold? My retreat is done. For years I have tempered my mind with the divine art of alchemy, bathed in the mystical teachings of the Emerald Tablet, probed the secrets of Kabbalistic doctrine, sojourned with the anchorites of Chpt. But now I have met the unicorn face to face, and I am undone, for nothing had prepared me for the fiery touch of his wondrous mind. 3 days I passed in reverie and prayer, until at last I sat in sunlight by my open door, and I was content, and he came to me at last and laid his thoughts on mine, and I, willing and trusting, moved with them, filled with sweetness and strange images, seemingly from times so remote as to be beyond reckoning. Finally I could contain no more, and his touch began to burn too brightly. I was overcome, but the creature withdrew and vanished from my sight. Now I understood the secret of that little hut, and why all our company displays such eagerness to retire there. For the unicorn must dwell nearby, or could it be that a portal to his secret realm is not far hence? After that first meeting, I saw the unicorn each day, but no more will I write but this. Here is an ancient mystery beyond compare, and yet the creature, can this be true, is now my friend. Says Eunostos, in friendship there is no other goal but the uncovering of the spirit. Tuesday of May the 11th. After the noon meal, the blessed Eunostos called me to his chamber. He asked me why I supposed there exist no true accounts of the unicorn, and answered himself saying, the unicorn is not drawn to clerics and philosophers like ourselves, but rather to the youthful and innocent. Those few scholars fated to meet the magical beast were marvelously emptied of their burdensome learning, and were ever after disinclined to write or speak of their encounters, for the memory of the unicorn is like a shining taper that words would only dim. Then Eunostos smiled as if amused, saying, "But I see some special destiny has singled out thee to do this work." "What work?" I asked, not comprehending. "Doth not thy hand still crave to write and draw? Then write and draw thou must, and record the truth and the history of the unicorn. It seems that a divine purpose is here to be revealed, and thy skill may bear great fruit in the end. Work diligently, and let us look to a swift conclusion of the whole labor. But do not be indiscreet, and keep the work secret. Hast thou not seen the sad fate of thy several friends, so dazzled by their own gifts that unknowing they have lost their way?" Then our master discharged me of all my other duties, and bade me to go and write. Thus humbled but exhilarated, I departed his chamber. Wednesday of May the 12th. Plainly, the proper shape for this undertaking must be a book, large and grand. On the order of this book, it must begin with the primeval conception of the unicorn, describing as accurately as possible the forces that brought him into existence, and how he quickens life, and the 4 ages, and of his gratitudes and movements, of his duties, his divisions and ranks, and of his visits with men. I shall ignore the many falsehoods and confusions abounding on this subject, and present the simple truth. And this book's purpose shall be to instruct the earnest pilgrim on how he may encounter the unicorn. Let it begin with an illumination, in the manner of those found in rich breviaries, that the book may find favor in the eyes of God and men.